this session. In this session, you are in for a treat because this session, more than any other session, goes to the left a little bit and you'll see why. We have a very important subject to discuss in a moment. And I know most of you are avidly trying to grow your business, trying to position your business, trying to make money from business. But I have a special guest today by the name of Storm Cunningham. And this gentleman is going to get you to think differently and to consider your business differently, consider what's going on in the world right now, consider what's going on globally, consider what's going on locally in your environment. And it's a pleasure to have him here because not many people know this subject as well as he does. Now, he has spoken to audiences of leaders of cities, of countries, of non-for-profits, foundations, companies, charities. He's all the way from Virginia, just outside Virginia. And today you are in for a treat. So welcome again to the Business Success Show. Now, this gentleman, Storm Cunningham, is a former Green Beret scuba medic with the US Army 7th Special Forces Group. In his spare time, he scuba dives, he motorcycles. He's an amateur herpetologist. And I said you are in for a treat now. And he's an author of several books. And I'm going to bring him up here and he can share with us what he does and why it's so important in this day and age and in the world we're living in right now. So Storm, thank you for being here as a special guest on the Business Success Show. Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me on your show, Mac.
You're most welcome. So Storm, just for our audience here, what I want to go to is, tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do currently and what led you to that line of work, by the way?
Well, I guess you could say I'm the guy. About the only thing, I do different things and work with different people on a day-to-day basis. And about the only thing that holds them all together are the two letters re. Everybody I deal with, whether they're business people, academics, nonprofit leaders, mayors, national leaders, they all are interested in improving places. They want to revitalize, regenerate, restore, reuse, repurpose, reconnect, just basically bring places back to life. And these could be urban places or rural places or even wild places. So one day I'm dealing with ecological restoration. The next day I'm dealing with brownfields redevelopment. The next day I'm dealing with historic building restoration. So it's really hard to say exactly what I do. You have to ask me at any given moment. But yeah, it's all focused on basically restoring the world. And my first love really is restoring the world for a living, showing people how they can actually earn a living, not just being sustainable. Sustainability is great, but most sustainability efforts really just, kind of reduce waste, reduce toxicity, reduce damage. And that's all well and good. We have to do that. But we can't really have a brighter future if all we're doing is destroying the world at a slower rate. The brighter future depends on undoing damage, not just reducing new damage. And the great thing is that several $1 trillion a year are being spent on this. It's the fastest growing part of the global economy. And as a result, the number of business opportunities for social entrepreneurs are absolutely vast.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, Storm, because some people would have been listening at the beginning thinking, oh, how's that relevant to me? I'm a small business owner. I'm a consultant. I'm running my business here, and Storm's talking about the environment. He's talking about redevelopment and redoing things. But you mentioned, for those who are listening, he said also that you could also revitalize your local community. You could look at as a social enterprise. You can actually start that business and make money from it whilst also caring for the environment and your local area and for the world as well. So continue, please, Storm.
Well, you asked before how I got into this. My first love has always been nature. So I got into this basically, I guess you could say, in the mid 80s when a German scientist working in Jamaica invited me down. He needed scuba divers to volunteer to help him with an experiment he was doing on how to restore coral reefs. And that sounded ridiculous to me. I mean, I know I've been diving all my adult life, and I know coral reefs take thousands of years to aggregate. So the idea of actually being able to restore one that's been damaged just seemed kind of silly. But I went down for a week and helped them install these experiments on the ocean floor, and then watched what happened. And saw his previous sites, and areas that have been total dead zones were suddenly springing back to life with hard corals, soft corals, fish, everything you could imagine all over the place. And that's when it suddenly hit me that you don't have to be satisfied with not doing damage, that there's a lot of restoration that the world needs as a result of 300 years of the last industrial revolution, polluting and destroying and extracting and fragmenting our world. And I saw this guy who was earning a living doing it. And then later on, I met another guy, Keith Bowers, who had just graduated from landscape architecture school. And he got a contract to restore a 4-mile stretch of stream in Maryland. And that showed him that you could actually make a living restoring urban streams. And he's been doing now that for 20 years.
Wow.
He's got a company that's doing over $20 million a year. And he started as a sole practitioner. So there's room for major people and just individual consultants like myself,
Yeah.
public speakers, but also for virtually unlimited growth. And basically, I got into this professionally when I wrote my first book, which was The Restoration Economy, which I started writing in 1996, and it came out in 2002. That's when I left my 9-to-5 job and got into this as a full-time profession.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you've been doing this for a long time, showing people how to restore their local community, their local area. And so that's fantastic. So right now, I think we do need to address the elephant in the room. With COVID, uh, that's hit and ravaged different countries at different levels, at different extremities. Some countries, we got a global audience here, people uh, in this session from all parts of the world. And some countries are still, as we speak, are still in a lockdown situation. They can't get on with their day to day. And other countries have got a bit more of a freedom movement. Yesterday, here in the UK, we had something called Freedom Day. So in the UK, suddenly we're out of, for now anyway, we can just get on with our day to day. We're out this lockdown. So what is the best way, would you say, to help a community economically recover from this COVID-19 calamity?
Well, it's really the same way that it was best for them to recover before COVID. The only real difference is that before, the communities that were really focused on revitalization were the ones that were in pretty dire straits. Their downtown was dead, or particular neighborhoods were dying, or they had lost a major employer. And they were really feeling the pain, they're feeling the urgency. So the only thing that's different now is that everybody's feeling the pain, everybody's feeling the urgency, which means that everybody's revitalizing at the same time, which is both good and bad. It's good for the world that everybody's starting to focus more on how do we create a better place, how do we create an environment that promotes business growth and increased quality of life and more equitable distribution of wealth. On the other hand, now there's a huge amount of competition for what revitalization resources are out there because everybody wants them. So the good news is that the best way to revitalize a place is to actually put a revitalization process in place, what I call a strategic renewal process. And the reason that's important is because virtually nobody's doing it.
Good,
Now,
just 1 minute. So, what is that?
yeah,
So, for those of you just tuned in, we are talking to Storm Cunningham, and we're talking about the environment. We're talking about COVID-19. We're talking about revitalizing, redeveloping local communities. We're talking about global issues that have been going on, and how you can also get involved in this growing part of the economy. You said it's a multi-trillion
Mhm.
dollar
Yeah.
industry that's booming, right?
Yep. 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 Virtually every city on the face of the earth is being regenerated and redeveloped. You know, there's a trillion right there. And then you've got all the infrastructure on the planet that's either old and outdated or decrepit, needing replacement or
Yeah,
renovation. There's another trillion right there. And
my
we haven't
goodness.
even touched watershed restoration, regenerative agriculture, fishery restoration, which is 10% of the global economy. It goes on and on and on.
So, ladies
But
and gentlemen, if you're listening in right now and you're thinking, what business can I get involved in? What can I get in? What can I get involved with? You're hearing it from Storm right now as part of the biggest growing area. That if it makes a difference to you and it makes a difference to the world, and it's important to you, listen very closely. So, Storm, you were talking about. I interrupted you, but apologies. But you're talking about the strategic plan or a strategic plan for the local
process.
area process. Go ahead.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So every business person on the face of the earth, or at least every successful business person on the face of the earth, knows that to reliably produce anything, you need a process.
Mm.
Doesn't matter whether you're turning iron ore into automobiles or peanuts into peanut butter or cotton into clothing. If you're going to make a business out of that, you got to have a process for that. The only people who don't seem to understand that are the people who run communities and regions and nations. They say we're going to revitalize this place, we're going to restore this place, and then you ask them, okay, great, so what's your process for producing revitalization? What's your process for producing resilience? And they'll just kind of scratch their heads and will say, well, yeah, we're going to do a lot of great projects. I say, yeah, okay, projects are great, but they're the last step of the process. How do you get to that point so that all these activities that you're going to be doing actually produce the end result that you want, which is revitalization? Because you can go to virtually any city on the face of the earth and find a huge inventory of regeneration and redevelopment projects going on all over the place, sometimes billion-dollar projects, and they still don't end up with revitalization
Oh,
because all they're doing is this project by project, stop, start, and just kind of hoping that somehow revitalization magically appears. So, one of the opportunities for your listeners who are consultants will be to learn what the reliable process is for producing revitalization and resilience, which coincidentally they can learn from reading my most recent book, which is called Reconomics. You can get it from Amazon and came out last year. And it's got the strategic renewal process in it. Every community, every neighborhood on the planet needs that process if they want revitalization or resilience. So you read the book and you could just about be an instant consultant in that area.
oh wow. So thanks for updating us on that. So Storm, are you saying then that there are local, um, I suppose, local municipalities or federal offices or local governments, if you like, who want to redevelop a specific area? Maybe it's a rundown town or rundown part of the city, but they don't really know what they're doing. It sounds like a fabulous idea, but it really doesn't manifest into anything, or it does. What can you elaborate a little bit more about that? Because I was listening to you and thinking, okay, so they have this idea, but it doesn't amount to much.
Well, it can amount to a lot on a project by project basis
Right.
because these regeneration redevelopment companies. I keep saying both because I know in the UK you call it regeneration.
They do.
Over here we call it redevelopment, but same basic thing. And there are companies out there that are doing billions of dollars a year, and they know how to do it. They know how to take a given piece of property, a waterfront, an old factory, brownfields, whatever, and clean it up and redo it and bring it back to life as a project. But they're working within the envelope of the project of the property that they own. That's not the same as revitalizing the community. So they can have a very successful project and the community itself can still be failing.
Mm.
So that's one problem, is that, places need to get out of this project by project, haphazard, disconnected, non-integrated mode and take revitalization seriously as an actual process, the same way any business would. The other problem is that most communities are stuck in what I call perpetual planning mode. They confuse writing a plan with actually doing something. And the mayors, the elected officials, love plans because they love to get up in front of the cameras and say, this is what we're doing. So the mayor will get up in front of the press and say, we're commissioning a plan, a revitalization plan, a resilience plan, a comprehensive plan, whatever. And now they've got a feather in their cap. People think revitalization is happening, and the mayor took no risk whatsoever. And a year later, the plan is delivered. So another press conference, mayor gets up there, here's our plan. And now everybody thinks, okay, now revitalization is really happening. And the mayor still hasn't taken any risk. All he had to do is write a check. The risk comes with actually implementing the plan, which politicians hate risk. So the plan goes on the shelf. 5 or 10 years later, the mayor calls a press conference. We need to update our plan. And this is what goes on in virtually every city on the planet.
Wow.
This perpetual planning syndrome where plans are constantly being created, nothing actually happens, but the citizens are fooled into thinking something is happening.
And it's not happening at all.
No.
So, okay, so as a citizen, then, for our listeners listening in, thinking, yeah, I drive past this part. I drive past this part of town, and for 10 years it's been run down. It's shabby. The whole, the economy's down. Unemployment is high. We must do something about this. And if I feel in my heart that, oh, actually, I like what Storm is saying. This makes sense. Maybe I can do something about this. How can I, as a citizen, do anything about this?
Well, let's take a tough scenario. Let's say you don't have any money.
Mm.
You've got no capital to work with. You can't buy a property and renew it yourself.
Yeah.
One of the most exciting things I've been seeing, and I see a lot of this because I edit a publication called Revitalization at revitalization.org. And it's got over 150 issues, over 8,500 articles, documenting all of this reactivity going on around the world. And some of the most interesting social enterprises are in the form of co-ops, cooperatives. And that's something you can start with no money whatsoever,
Right.
because basically it's a hybrid of a business and a nonprofit. And you can be the organizer, get a community together. For instance, in Minneapolis, private real estate developers had totally failed this neighborhood of Minneapolis. It was going downhill, and the developers were doing nothing. It was a market failure, and they created a nonprofit, NEIC. I forget exactly what it stands for, but basically, it's a cooperative neighborhood revitalization company in a cooperative form. They can earn a profit just like a regular business can, but it's owned by the members. So it's kind of,
Okay.
instead of stockholders like with a corporation, it's a membership organization, but it can earn a profit. And they've been doing a wonderful job. In fact, the latest news just came out was a microbrewery came into Minneapolis, and they were looking for a neighborhood to get started in. And this cooperative said, we'll renovate this old building for you if you'll sign a lease and commit to moving in there. And that's exactly what happened. The microbrewery needed an old factory building, lots of room, and the neighborhood needed the microbrewery. So the cooperative actually bought the building, which was very cheap since it was vacant for years,
Of course.
did the basic renovation that the microbrewery needed, and now they've got themselves a great employer. And the magic of microbreweries is that they tend to attract people from far beyond their immediate area. People will drive a long way for a good beer. So it's not like a grocery store where the only people who go there are the people who live within a few blocks of it.
Yeah.
So all that money is coming in from outside of the area, which further helps revitalize it. And that's all business is doing it. You got a microbrewery business and you got a neighborhood revitalization co-op, which is also a business.
Oh, I see. Can you, thanks for that, Storm. Can you break down the type of entities that you've come across? So you mentioned just now a cooperative, which I never even thought about. And I presume there are various types of social enterprises or non-for-profit, or it's typically just a business, which is purely there for business. So for our listeners here, what are the different types of entities that someone could start? Yeah, even if they don't have money. If they have money, yes, it's a business. They want to make a profit. They don't have money, but they have a conscience that they want to make the area better. What are the various entities that they could possibly start?
Well, I mean, you could start just by changing careers. The standard model is, go to school, learn something like restoration ecology if you're a nature lover. Now you learn how to restore for a living, restore nature for a living. You can do that either as an employee or as a private practitioner, as a consultant. And like with Keith Bowers, the guy who's restoring the streams, he started off just as a sole practitioner, and now he's got like 50 employees.
Wow.
So it can start as one and then grow into a corporation. I know another person who started a similar company, and it got bought out by a huge multinational firm, and is now part of a publicly traded corporation. And so it's really hard to generalize about it, because the growth potential of them is so great that if you've got capital, then you can actually go out and find somebody who's in this already. And if you've got a particular type of business expertise, like you're a really good manager, you
Yeah,
can find an entrepreneur who's got the heritage, the historic building restoration skills you need, or the infrastructure restoration skills you need, or whatever it might be. And you can buy them and provide the capital and the management expertise to expand their business.
that's fantastic. That's good to know. Yeah, that clears it up a little bit, I think. Yeah, so someone could transition from what they're doing right now and form a different corporation and really get on with this revitalization, redevelopment, regeneration. Or they could, I suppose, just start a not-for-profit with a group of other people and get
Yeah.
it going. How easy is it?
You can make a lot of money as a nonprofit. It sounds like there's no money available, but nonprofit is just a tax status. It's not a mission.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
some of the highest paid executives in this country
yeah,
are nonprofit executives,
yeah. I
like
read that.
millions of dollars a year. So, yeah, the nonprofit's an option. Probably the easiest way would be to stick with whatever you're doing
Uh-huh.
and add a revitalization spin to it, or resilient spin, if you prefer to focus on climate resilience and that sort of thing. Um, so all of this activity, this trillions of dollars of activity, um, so all of this trillions of dollars worth of activity requires pretty much every standard profession that you know of.
Right,
There are
right.
lawyers involved, and real estate agents involved, and architects and engineers and planners and economists, and uh, just about regular managers, accountants,
Yeah,
investment advisors. So whatever somebody might be right now, you can probably find some aspect of restoring nature, or revitalizing cities, or creating resilience, um, that requires that expertise. But you would have to actually understand the process of revitalizing places, or making them more resilient, in order for you to apply your current knowledge to
right.
that situation.
And
And
that's where you come in, and people can certainly follow you and get your book. And well, we'll talk about in a moment how they connect, how they can connect with you. But what I want to say is this, Storm. Are there any specific tax advantages of someone getting into this, whether it's a not-for-profit or a business? Are there any tax advantages that you are aware of? Because you said one of the things they can do is start something on the side and grow that. Now, many more people are becoming more conscious as business owners, entrepreneurs, that our clients want to see what social issues we get involved with, that social issues that are important to us as a company. And so that's where my mind went as you were talking. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, just about every government wants their old historic buildings to be restored and reused, the vacant buildings to be reactivated, their contaminated lands to be cleaned up, their watersheds to stop flooding.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, every place has these needs already. So they often offer tremendous either tax credits or actual grants. So governments are handing out huge amounts of money to private businesses that do this kind of thing, especially social businesses, because there it's quite obvious that their goal is to improve society or create jobs or
Yeah.
clean up the environment or whatever for a living. And the uh, the benefits of offering these tax advantages to communities can be tremendous. For instance, the state of Pennsylvania just this month announced that something like 30 projects were getting about $5 million worth of tax credits. And these were all focused on downtown revitalization or high street revitalization
Okay.
over in the UK. And they were projecting that this $5 million worth of tax credits that they were giving to these companies that were doing these projects was going to create over $250 million worth of private investment in Pennsylvania communities. And that's a pretty good return on investment, where state can put in 5 million and get back 250 million.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things I was reading about you, you talk quite a bit about the difference between vision, strategy, and plan. And so, if someone comes across an area that definitely needs revitalizing, regeneration, redevelopment, and they kind of create this vision. And I suppose oftentimes that's where it stays, whether it's the mayor, whether it's a local citizen, whether it's an individual. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts around the vision, strategy, and plan. And I'm sure it's all in your book, but if you can elaborate a bit
Sure.
on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, visions for communities and neighborhoods are very popular now. You go to just about anywhere and you can hear about a visioning session taking place.
That's right.
And that's great. But a vision is only one of the 6 elements of an overall renewal process. So saying, okay, we've got a vision, why aren't we revitalizing? Is kind of like a carpenter saying, well, I've got these nails here. Why don't I have a bookshelf yet? You know, you got to actually use the vision,
Yeah.
just like you've got to use the nails. And so the first step after you get the vision is you got to have a strategy. The strategy's sole purpose is to successfully create the vision, bring the vision into reality. So if you've got a vision without a strategy, you're not going to go anywhere. The only purpose of a strategy is to create success.
Mm.
And the trouble is that most people don't know what a strategy is. I'm asking mayors who have announced a revitalization program, so what's your strategy? And they'll reach up onto the shelf and pull down a 300-page plan and say, here it is. I say, no, that's a plan. What's your
Yeah.
strategy? A strategy is usually only 2 or 3 sentences at the most.
Mhm.
If you can't hold your strategy in your head without consulting a book, it's not going to do you any good, because strategies have to influence your decisions on a day-to-day basis. So you start with a vision. You got to know what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
You then create a strategy, which basically is the technique you're going to use for overcoming the major obstacles to that vision.
Okay.
And then you need to, if you're working at a community level, you need to take a look at your local policies, make sure your policies are going to be supporting your strategy and not undermining it. There are many places that launch a revitalization program and it fails, and it turns out their own strategies, which were 30 or 40 or 50 years out of date, were undermining it. They wouldn't even allow them to do what they said they wanted to do. So policies are important. You got to put together partnerships to attract the resources to make these things happen. And out of that, you can create projects, which are the actual activities that create the revitalization. And there's one thing missing. Those are 5 elements there: vision, strategy, policies, partnerships, and projects. The
Right.
missing element is the program. This has got to be done on an ongoing basis. You're not going to create revitalization through this stop, start, project by project motion. It's just like an assembly line for cars. You know, you got to keep it going. You know, it's if you stop halfway, you've only got half a car, and nobody's going anywhere in that. So you got to have an ongoing program for all of this. And there's a business opportunity too. A social entrepreneur can be the one who, because it takes no capital whatsoever to create an ongoing program, which can
Mhm.
house that process. All the money is in the actual projects, the partnerships, all that sort of stuff. You don't have to have that. You can be the one who helps lead local revitalization just by housing that ongoing program.
Wow, that's some great insight on that. Thank you, Storm. Storm, I have one more question for you, and certainly, then I want to talk about how people can connect with you and learn more about what you do and how they can get your book, etc.
Mhm.
One of the questions I have is this: how can, if someone's listening in right now, which we have many, the and they're a bit more humanitarian, they want to go down this social enterprise route, how can they grow their local economy in a way that benefits maybe low income minorities? And in the UK, we have in the UK and around the world, there are pockets, as you know, around cities where low income minorities get neglected,
Right.
and they feel underrepresented, they feel under funded, and it creates rifts and it creates they feel injustices that come along with that. So,
Right.
someone who's very economically, socially conscious as well, what can they do to grow their local economy?
Well, actually, you hit on it when you brought up the subject of vision. Vision by itself isn't going to help anybody.
Mm,
But if it's part of that strategic renewal process, then that's where all that stakeholder engagement comes in. That's where you make sure that all of your minorities, all of your low income populace, everybody who is especially is underrepresented, because you know the heavily represented ones are going to be at the table anyway. So
right.
you got to put the special focus on getting in the people who are normally left out and make sure they're part of that process of creating that vision. And if their hopes and dreams and desires and goals are included in that vision, then because the vision is driving the whole rest of that process, the vision is driving the strategy, it's driving the policies, it's driving the partnerships, which means it's driving the projects, then their needs are going to be manifesting in
All
each of
right.
those other things along the way. And they don't even have to become engaged in a project because the vision is already there. It's already got them guiding that project. So it's very efficient for the project developers, the real estate developers,
Right.
because they hate having to engage the public. uh,
Right. So
so
they'd have someone doing that on their behalf.
yeah,
To
so if they have to engage the public every time a project starts, it slows things down. These guys are working on borrowed money, so the interest is piling up, and they've got all these people arguing over what they want. It shouldn't be taking place at that level. It should be taking place at the beginning of that process in the visioning, and then the projects go through a filter based on that vision.
oh, I see. So let me get this right. So if I'm consciously aware and I do want to help these low income, maybe
Mhm.
minorities, underrepresented people, and you're saying, look, what is the problem? And come up with a vision. Okay, with a vision, then we can either get various stakeholders to actually change that situation. So I am now the, if you like, the middle man or the middle woman, liaising with the community, liaising with the developers or the local council offices or whatever, and I'm really representing the community, but making sure these developers or these outside stakeholders really do their best to help that community to come from just survival to the place of where they are thriving again, maybe in 5, 10 years time. So is that the kind of thing you're saying? I hold the vision and I help it come to life.
Yeah, and it's important that whoever facilitates the vision, whoever's housing this ongoing program, is a trusted member of the community, and it could be a trusted organization. For instance, there are over 1,000 community foundations around the world, and community foundations tend to be very trusted local entities. Their sole purpose is to fund and support local social enterprises, local nonprofits, provide them with office space or whatever it is they need. And that's a great structure to put one of these ongoing programs in. So you could start a community foundation. And there are tons of major public foundations out there that fund community foundations.
Oh, I see. Well, it's been amazing. Listen, everyone, you've been listening to Storm Cunningham here at the Business Success Show, giving us an insight in an area that you rarely hear about. Now, you've heard it from, if you've just tuned in, make sure you rewind and listen to the whole thing and get to know who Storm Cunningham is and what he does and why this work is so important for our global economy and our local economy as well. So Storm, please share with us, someone wants to get hold of you, they want to learn more, they want to really go down this route or route, as you say in the USA. Hey, by the way, those are listening in, Storm is originally from the UK, is living in most of his life in the USA. So how can they get hold of you?
Well, probably the easiest to remember would just be to go to stormcunningham.com. And that's my public speaking site. And I've got links to everything else I do on that site, to the books, organizations, revitalization.org. The other thing would be for those who actually do want to get into this for a living, you can go to reconomics.org and you can actually get certified as a revitalization and resilience facilitator there. It's the tuition is less than $300. And that way you can turn whatever you're currently doing for a living into an element of revitalization, regeneration, restoration, or whatever.
That's fantastic. Reconomics.org. That's
Yeah, just economics.org with an R in front of it. Reconomics.
There you go. You got it. So you heard it from Storm. Storm, I want to say such a big, big thank you for opening our eyes, opening up our ears, opening up our hearts to want to make a difference. So you heard it from Storm. Whether you're running one business now and you want to make a difference, or you want to add a social element to it, or you are thinking of transitioning into something that's more meaningful or fulfilling for you, then you want to check out Storm. Go to reconomics.org or stormcunningham.com, I believe. Is that right?
Yep.
And then connect with him, learn more, get his books, learn more, and make a difference. And together we can make this world a much, much, much better place going forward. So Storm, thank you very much for being here. And I wish you all the best in everything that you do, Storm. Thank you for being on this particular session with us.